everyone, it's Jen from Old Tinker's Studio. In this Blender tutorial for beginners, you will learn how to make a neon sign animation in Blender 2.9. So let's get on with the tutorial. You will be learning how to make a neon sign and animate it in Blender 2.9, and then render the animation out in a video format. First, I delete the default cube and add some text. I'm going to use the M+ rounded font for the tutorial. The link to find it on Google Fonts is in the description. Under the Object Data Properties tab, I open the Font section and click on the folder next to Regular to open up my font. To make life easier, leave the unzipped file of the font on your desktop or wherever you downloaded it so you can quickly find it. Under the Paragraph section, I changed the horizontal option to center so I can center the text from the start. And make sure to rotate the text around the x-axis 90 degrees to make it easier to work with. Then tab into Edit mode and use backspace to delete the default text, and then type my own text. The reason I chose this font is because I want the edges of the text to be rounded, more like actual neon tubes. I'm going to be using curves instead of a mesh for this tutorial. In Object mode, I select the text, and under the Object menu, I choose Convert to Curves from Mesh. Now the Object Data Properties becomes the Curves properties. I'll be extruding some of the letters, so I need to change the shape to 3D, so I have access to all three axes. For the Fill mode, I choose Full. To make these tubes thicker, I increase the depth under the Bevel properties in the Geometry section. For this to look like neon tubes, I need to connect the letters. Go back into Edit mode. For the B, I need to cut out a segment, so I'll select a couple of vertices and add a subdivision. I need to add a couple of subdivisions. Then I select two of the vertices and delete them using segments. I then select the vertex that is closest to the L, and I extrude it back along the y-axis. Then using V on my keyboard, I bring up the handle menu and change the vertex to vector. I then select two vertices on the L and make a cut, and then extrude one of the vertices back along the y-axis. Again, change it to vector handle. I then select the extrusions for the B and the L, connect them using the F key. Then I continue this same process with each letter. In wireframe mode, I then select all of the vertices that I extruded, and I change the handle type to aligned. This will round them out and make the geometry look better. I then make any further adjustments. Now I'm going to place my neon sign within a scene. First, I build a box that will contain the neon sign. Back in object mode, I use Shift A to add a cube. Then I center it in the scene. I then scale the cube to be just a bit larger than the sign. And I do this in wireframe so I can see the actual sign. I then apply the scale with Control A, and this will help keep the proportion in the next step. Then tab into Edit mode, and select the front face of the box. And then inset the face using I on my keyboard. And then I extrude the face back along the y-axis. Now I'm going to place the box and the neon sign on a wall. So in object mode, I used Shift A to add a plane and place it behind the box containing the sign. I then scale the plane to the size of a section of wall. And then apply the scale using Control A. This will help when applying the materials. I will now add materials to the box and the wall. The links to the materials I'll be using for the box and wall are in the description. I'll be using the Node Wrangler add-on to easily set up the materials. Under the UV editing workspace, I select the box, and in edit mode, I use U on my keyboard and use Smart UV Project to unwrap the box. Under the shading workspace, I add a new material. I select the principled shader, and using Control, Shift, and T, I select the textures from the wood material. And I change the scale in the mapping node to make the material look a little bit better. Since the wall is a flat plane, I don't need to unwrap it. Select the wall and add a new material. I select the principled shader, and using Control, Shift, and T, I select the textures for the brick material. On the normal map, I change from tangent space to object space and increase the strength. Now it's time to add material to the sign. I add a new texture. And I delete the principled shader node and add an emission shader. I connect the emission shader to the surface of the material output node and give the sign a color. In order to properly show a glow, I need to activate the bloom, which is under the render properties, and increase the intensity for the Eevee render engine. I also changed the color to the same as the material color. Now if I go into rendered settings, I can see a glowing sign. I can then change the strength of the emission shader. I select the sign, and using the object menu, I convert the curves back into a mesh. I'm doing this so I can easily add a second material to the sign. So I hide the wall and the box so I can see the back of the sign. I add a second material and make it black. Then in wireframe view, then I tab into edit mode, and I select all the extruded parts of the sign. And assign the black material. The reason I'm doing this is so the connection points won't be glowing. Now it's time to make the animation for the sign. Under the animation workspace, I changed the end frame to 72 to make the animation 3 seconds long. I will be animating the emission shader strength. So I open the Materials tab. On the first frame, I hover my cursor over the strength field and use I on my keyboard to set a keyframe. I don't know if this is a bug or not, but you won't actually see the keyframe in the dope sheet. I move to frame 10 and change the strength and add another keyframe. I continue to move to various frames and change the strength and add keyframes. Then I open the Properties panel with the N key and select Lock Camera to View under the View tab. I then go into Camera View with 0 on the numpad, and I move the scene around until I find the look I want to render. Under the Output Properties tab, I choose where I want my render to be stored. I will use the default PNG file format. And under the Render drop-down menu, I choose Render Animation. I then change the timeline to the video sequencer. Under the Add drop-down menu, I choose Image/Sequence and import the PNG images. I change the file format to FFmpeg. For the encoder, I'm using MPEG-4. Under the View drop-down menu, I choose Sequence Render Animation to render the video file. I hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.